Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everyone doing today? Dr. Roddenberry coming to you live in our YouTube broadcast. Quick sound check. I'm not in my office, so I don't know how good the sound is right here. Please, if you would, Shamay or anybody else who happens to be here, can you please type in a quick response and let me know how the sound is coming through? Can you hear me? Can you hear me and do you understand what I'm saying? Hi, Shamay. Just a quick check. Just a quick sound check. Okay. As I wait for your feedback, I'm going to go ahead and get started. But if you would, please let me know how the sound is coming through. We hear you clearly. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Shamay. Great, great, great. You know what? Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're talking about Chapter 3, which is prenatal development. Awesome, Ciara. Good morning. There is a music, little noise in the background, but your sound is clear. Okay, good deal. Yeah, I'm in a restaurant, and I tried to get them to turn down the sound a little bit. So you're just going to have a little background music for the broadcast today. At least it's smooth jazz, so we'll do the best we can. Okay, Imani? Fantastic. All right, so let's see. Chapter 1 was sort of an introduction to the developmental perspective. Chapter 2 talked about the nature aspect of human development, what genes are, genetic disorders are, and how parents can evaluate genetic risks to their children. Chapter 3, we're actually going to start the developmental process. But as I suggested to you, development starts at conception and goes all the way till the day we die. So this week we're going to be talking about the part of development that occurs before you are actually born. Uh, huh, huh. Hold on just a second. I'm getting an important text here. Okay. Great. Hold on, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that right now. Okay, so let's see. Now, the important thing about what I really want you to get from this class is the idea uh, uh, what we're going to be talking about, the reason that prenatal development is important, at least in my mind, is because what we know as developmental psychologists is that you can manage your risk to the baby during development. That's the important part of the story in developmental psychologists when we're talking about prenatal development. What we want to know, what I want you to know from this class is how to manage the risk to your baby while the baby is and while the baby is born, while the baby is developing. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting calls from my wife. Our water went out at our house today, so I'm a little bit uptight. Now, this negative outcomes related to prenatal development include miscarriage, congenital abnormalities or birth defects, low birth weight, and if your baby and infant mortality. So these are sort of the four areas of risk in prenatal development, that your baby will be miscarried, your baby will have a birth defect, your baby will have low birth weight, or your baby might die during the first year of life. Yeah, I know, right? If you look over on the chart over here on the far left, I know it's kind of small. Really, I just want you to sort of get an idea of sort of the numbers for United States relative to the rest of the world. Look at the infant mortality rate. You'll notice that the United States is actually nowhere near the top when it comes to preventing infant mortality. And so the deal is, the better you treat that baby during prenatal development, the better that baby's outcomes are during the first year. Did you know that you are more likely to die during the first year of your life than you are the next 25 years of your life? So that first year of life is very, very critical for a baby. Okay, now what I want you to know is a couple of definitional words. Teratogens. Teratogens, I call them teratogens. I've heard people call them teratogens. I'm not sure. But a teratogen is any agent that can harm your developing baby. So anything from tobacco to too much caffeine to illegal drugs like heroin and cocaine are things that can harm a developing baby. And the science of studying teratogens is called teratology, the study of the causes of birth defects. Now, what do teratogens do? These things that get in that can harm your baby. They can stunt your baby's growth and make them come out of low birth weight. It turns out that being low birth weight is has long-lasting impacts on your baby. Teratogens can stunt your baby's brain development and cause cognitive problems later in life, or it can even damage organs that cause your baby to die during the first year. So damage to the heart, damage to the liver, damage to any of these, right? Now, here's the deal. A general note about teratogens. How do we know if a teratogen is going to harm the baby? Well, it kind of depends. The amount of a teratogen affects the likelihood of damage to your baby. The more poison that you put that gets to the baby, the more damage will be done. Of course, but you know what? Some humans are more susceptible or more genetically susceptible to harm than are others. And also the timing of the exposure. So ingesting a teratogen during the 4th week of pregnancy is going to cause different damage than ingesting a teratogen in the 25th or 30th week of pregnancy. All right, so what we're trying to do by understanding teratology is we're trying to prevent negative outcomes associated with prenatal development. And in order to do that, we need to know not only about the teratogens, but the factors of teratogens that cause these negative effects. Okay, what are some common teratogens? You probably know alcohol, not good for your baby. Mothers who drink, and you know, the research definitely, it's questionable on whether or not you can drink at all without harming your baby. So most doctors will tell you just to avoid alcohol at all. Mothers who drink a lot during pregnancy may have a baby born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. And children who are born to moms who drink a lot, who have fetal alcohol syndrome, are going to have learning problems and behavior problems that show up early in life and last throughout the lifetime. I don't know if you know this, but children with fetal alcohol syndrome are more likely to die from suicide, accidents. They're more likely to drink and die of alcohol poisoning or drug overdose than are children who do not have fetal alcohol syndrome. So alcohol is a really, really big teratogen. Nicotine, you probably know that you shouldn't smoke while you are pregnant. You probably shouldn't smoke at all, but you certainly shouldn't smoke while you're pregnant. Children who are born to mothers who smoke are more likely to have low birth weight. And low birth weight children have academic problems, attention, and behavioral problems later in life. They're going to have impaired newborn brain development, and they're going to be more likely to smoke too. All right, low birth weight, again, it's a very important and impactful outcome for a baby. Did you know that mothers who get pregnant and who are addicted to opiates, doctors a lot of times will actually put them on a methadone maintenance program rather than making them quit cold turkey. Now, the baby's going to be born addicted to methadone and is going to have to be weaned off methadone, but it turns out, but mothers who quit cold turkey are more likely to go into labor early and have a low birth weight baby. And your doctor would rather your baby be born full term than be born preterm, because an addiction to methadone actually doesn't have long-lasting problems like being born low birth weight does. They recently discovered that Tylenol is supposed to be safe during pregnancy, has something to do with autism. Exactly. Diet pills, aspirin, and as Imani says, ibuprofen. So really, I hate to say it, we put all the pressure on moms, it seems like, but you really have to be careful what you ingest during pregnancy, because even drugs that you can obtain legally, like antibiotics, antidepressants, some of these drugs can actually be teratogenic towards your baby. So that's why, if you'll notice on some packages, they always say, tell your doctor if you're pregnant or plan to become pregnant. And the idea is, even drugs that we use therapeutically can harm a developing baby. Your baby doesn't know the difference between a drug your doctor administered you and one in a street drug that you take. So you have to really be careful about the chemicals that you ingest during pregnancy. Okay, so briefly, what I'm going to cover today is we're going to talk about the periods of prenatal development, what happens during these periods, and how teratogens affect the baby during these stages of prenatal development. So just a quick overview. Typically, developmental psychologists, developmentalists, medical doctors, whoever, divide the prenatal period of 40 weeks into 3 broad periods. There's a germinal period, which is where the fertilized egg, the zygote, comes down the fallopian tube and embeds in the uterine wall. Okay, that's sort of the germinal period. Then from 2 to 8 weeks is what we call the embryonic period, where your baby where your baby is the period of your baby from 2 to 8 weeks, where the embryo develops all of the organ systems and body parts that it's going to need. Okay? And then from 8 weeks to 40 weeks, sort of the longest period, is the fetal period, which is where your organ systems finish and the baby grows and gains most of its weight. Now, all of your organ systems are going to finish except for that brain. And we're going to talk about that over the course of this semester, and we're going to talk about how the brain finishes. But you know what? Even when you're born, your nervous system is not done. Did you know that your nervous system is not fully finished developing until sometime in your mid-20s, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go back and start at the beginning. The germinal period, the first 2 weeks after conception. It's the creation of a zygote, which is a fertilized egg cell that floats down. Typically, your fertilization is going to occur in the fallopian tube, and then the fertilized egg cell is going to float down the fallopian tube as it begins to differentiate and develop into multiple cells, and it's going to float down over the first 4 to 5 to 6 days till it gets to the uterine wall. At that point, we don't call it a zygote anymore. We call it a blastocyst. So it's sort of a hollow ball of cells, about 120 cells, and it implants into the uterine wall. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm just kind of uptight. The well at our house went out. It's going to cost $3,500 to get my water fixed at the house. So it's a stressful day, so I do apologize if I seem a little bit distracted. Probably too much information from you, but I hate it when this happens. Okay, now, So this fertilized egg cell floats down the uterus and it implants into the uterine wall. And what's going to begin developing are the support structures for your baby. The placenta, okay, which is sort of it's a disc-shaped group of tissues that have the small blood vessels from the mom and the fetus, and the umbilical cord, which is basically the blood vessels that attach the developing baby to the placenta. Now, if you look at this picture right underneath me, what this picture is showing you is that you've got the maternal part of the placenta and the fetal part of the placenta. Now, the cool thing is the mother's blood system and the baby's blood system don't actually connect, all right? And this creates sort of a protective barrier for the baby. Now, so the mother's blood vessels run really close to the baby's blood vessels, and small molecules, food, oxygen, water, the nutrients that the baby needs, seep out of the mother's blood system and then seep into the baby's blood system. But large molecules that are potentially dangerous can't get out of the mother's blood system and into the baby's blood system. So you can think of this as sort of a filter between the mom and the baby. So good things can get from the mom's blood into the baby's blood, but bad things are prevented from getting out of the mom's blood system and into the baby's blood system. This filtering system is called the maternal blood barrier. Okay, it allows for the transfer of. Okay, I apologize. I'm having the worst day ever. Okay, it disconnected. Can everybody hear me and see me? I do apologize for that. Let's see what we got. Can everybody see me? Okay. All right, fantastic. So now, one other structure I do want you to know, beside the placenta and the umbilical cord, there's this amniotic sac, which is sort of the sac that your baby is floating in as it's developing. And if you look at this picture underneath right here, you see the placenta, the close-up of the placenta. But then if you look here, what you're going to see is we have the placenta, we have the umbilical cord, and then we have this sac around the baby that contains the amniotic fluid that the baby is floating around in. Okay? Now, this is the first period, the germinal period. Now, once actually the neural tube, the nervous system begins developing, starting at about 7 to 8 weeks, starting about 2 weeks, we say that the baby is now in the embryonic period. Now, this period lasts from 2 to 8 weeks after conception. And 3 major events are going to happen during this period. Number 1, the neural tube is going to develop, which becomes the spinal column in the brain. You're going to develop the support structures, like the placenta. And what you're going to see is organogenesis. So the blastocyst is actually going to develop into different parts: the skin and the nervous system on the outside, the circulatory system and bones in the middle, and in the very middle of that little developing ball of cells, you're going to have the digestive and respiratory system. And every part of your body is going to begin growing during the embryonic period. Your little arm buds are going to come out, your leg buds are going to come out, the eyes begin forming, the brain begins forming. So we say that the baby's systems begin developing during this period. All organ systems begin to develop during this period. We call this organogenesis. Now, as I say, not all of your brain structures are going to be complete during the 8 weeks. In fact, your nervous system, which begins developing at 2 weeks of development, is not going to be done for 25 years, but all of your organs are going to begin growing during this period. Now, I want to take a brief moment, since this is a psychology class, and let's step back and talk specifically about the development of the nervous system. So, as I mentioned to you, the outer ball of cells in this little blastocyst, called the ectoderm, are going to begin developing in the nervous system. So if you look at this picture right underneath me, so you've got this ectoderm, this little ball of cells. What's going to start happening after a couple of weeks is this little ball of cells is going to start folding in on itself, and you're going to get this thing called a neural groove. So you've got this blastocyst, and on the outside, it's going to start folding in on itself. And this neural groove is the beginning of your nervous system. It begins to develop during the 3rd week of pregnancy on the ectoderm. If all goes well, this groove is going to turn into a closed tube, which is going to become your spine and your spinal column and your brain. And if you look at this picture underneath me, what they're kind of showing you here is how this happens. So on the far left image, you see this organ, and you see it starts to get this black groove. And this groove is going to fold over on itself until it becomes a hollow tube. And you'll see the pictures. It's a little flat depression. It becomes deeper. It becomes called the notochord. And then it folds in on itself and goes from being called a notochord to what we'll call the neural tube. Now, has anybody ever heard of spinal bifida? Anybody ever heard of spinal bifida before? Spinal bifida is actually a neural tube disorder where your spine doesn't completely close up. You actually have sort of a hole in the spine of the baby. Yes, the tube doesn't fully form. Thank you very much, Katie. Right, we'll close. Katie, if you talk too much, I'm going to make you teach this class. You sound really smart. I'm just kidding, right? So the failure of the neural tube to close may cause anencephaly or spinal bifida. All right. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard, they tell mothers who are, this is my gene. Okay, good. So of course, Katie would probably tell you if you are planning to get pregnant, you should make sure you take folic acid. Folic acid, or a lack thereof, folic acid is seen as a preventative against these neural tube defects. So, the weird thing is you can already, if you don't know, you can already be 8 weeks into your pregnancy before you even know that 4 weeks into your pregnancy before you even miss your first period, right? So you may not know that you're pregnant. So if you're even thinking about it, before you even get pregnant, you should start taking it while you're trying to get pregnant. Katie, feel free to add anything in if you want to, using your birth worker's experience, okay? Now, so you're going to get this neural tube. Now, you actually have these embryonic stem cells. It's going to be in the middle of your brain. We won't talk about that, but there's a part of your nervous system. The weird thing with neurons is your neurons actually are created in these stem cells, and your neurons, this is crazy, will actually migrate. So all of the neurons in your nervous system are born in one place, and then they actually will move to the right place of your nervous system. So all of your neurons are being born in the stem cell area of your brain, and then as these neurons develop, they grow, and then they will migrate to the appropriate place in the nervous system, and then once they are in place, they will send out a route to the proper place in the brain that they are supposed to connect. So if you think about it, all of your brain areas are connected to one another. So during the prenatal development period, your neurons are going to be born, they move to the correct place in your brain, and then it'll shoot out a route that connects that neuron to the other part of the brain that it's supposed to be connected to. And so you can think of the neural development process as involving the birth of neurons, the movement of neurons, and then the connection of neurons. Once in place, these neurons send out connecting roots or axons to the predetermined locations. And this sort of creates the general architecture of the nervous system. When you're born, you're pretty much going to have all the neurons in your nervous system, and your brain's going to have a general architecture connecting different parts of the brain to other parts of the brain. Now, what's the part of your brain that takes a long time to finish, 25 years? We're going to talk about it in more detail, but it's going to be the myelination, the growth of fatty tissue around your neurons. And then once these connectins, neurons are going to stimulate one another. And when neurons stimulate one another, they start to grow towards each other. They start to engage in what we call the dendritic blooming. Dendritic blooming. And that's sort of how your nervous system develops. So the one thing you want to do to have a healthy baby is you're going to take that folic acid, and that helps that neural tube close and form properly. And then if you avoid the teratogens, hopefully all of those neurons are going to develop correctly and go to the correct place and connect each other to make the final architecture of your brain. And then during the first couple of years of your life, you basically play with your baby and stimulate all the different parts of their brain, and it causes these little neurons to grow together, creating your mature brain in your brain connections. Now, so that's sort of the brain part. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out to you is this idea of organogenesis occurring in your nervous system. If you look at this picture over here, what you're going to notice, they have three colors: pink, yellow, and blue and green, demonstrating the three periods of prenatal development. The pink area is what we would call the germinal period, and then you'll see the yellow block of line represents the embryonic period, and then the green block represents the fetal period. Now, organogenesis is that curve that goes over the top of these three areas, and what you're going to see is that all of your organs begin developing somewhere between the second and eighth week of pregnancy. And if you look at the line underneath the